What is law school really like? Everyone wants to know, especially since Kim K failed the baby bar in her less than orthodox law school path. So, let's dig in to the 101 on law school life. Hey y'all, welcome back to #Lawyered. You have, of course, me and Austin live and in studio. And we're here to talk about Kim K. Well, I mean briefly. I wish the whole thing was about Kim K.
Okay.
You know I love the Kardashians.
Well, and I knew that was going to be a rolling theme in this when I suggested that we do this topic. But
absolutely. It broke my heart that Kim K failed the baby bar. It was so sad because, at the end of the day, I know there are haters out there and people are like, ugh, Kim Kardashian, you're going to be a lawyer? You're Kim K. Your body was used as a mold for a perfume bottle. Who will take you seriously? Which I hear them, but at the same time, I was like, look, if Kim K can become a lawyer and put her mind to it, what an amazing example that would be for other young women or people who identify as women, so on and so forth.
Well, yeah, if she can put her mind to it, she's got a little setback right now.
Well, she got a little setback right now. Yeah, she failed the baby bar. So.
Now, and I'll be honest, I told you this. I've never heard of the baby bar before.
Yes.
I don't know if it was something that they did after, or not. They didn't do it at Texas Tech, or it was after law school. I don't understand. So, I mean, what is
the baby bar? Okay, well, don't worry, Grandpa. You're not that old. It's not a thing in Texas. So the baby bar, yeah, I know it's in California. I'm not sure about the other states. But so since you and I are both licensed in Texas, we didn't have to take it. But the California baby bar is the baby bar exam, and I'm using air quotes here, that all first-year students have to take, first-year law school students take in the state of California. And it's to show an understanding and a grasp of basically the concepts you would understand in your first year of law school. And you're supposed to take that. Kim K did. She failed it. She started studying for it a second time and then got derailed because according to, I think it was TMZ that published this article a few days ago, her whole family, or a large number of people in her family, including, it was either Psalm or Saint, got COVID. And so that totally derailed her studying for the second time for the baby bar.
So you have to pass, so in California, you have to pass this to go to your second year?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a foreign concept to us because it's not in our state.
I know it's a big, big deal.
Okay.
Yeah, because when she did her episode on Keeping Up with the Kardashians where she took the baby bar, because it's in COVID, the proctors, she had to be on screen with the proctors watching her the whole time, and I think she wore adult diapers in case she had to pee her pants because she couldn't get up to use the toilet.
Did they film her while she was taking it?
No.
Okay.
No. I think...
I was wondering, just because you know how restrictive they are about the way they proctor those exams, and at least in Texas.
Okay, let me tell you. Let me get real TMI here. Okay, so in Texas, we'll get into this, you have to pass the bar exam like every other state, right?
Right.
Okay, well, I don't know what your experience was, but I was fortunate enough because I went to Baylor. I was able to just take it with all my peeps at Baylor in the Thunderdome, which is this really big auditorium that we use for guest speakers, lectures, and also our larger classes like constitutional law. So we're sitting there, we're taking the bar exam. In order to go to the bathroom, you have to raise your hand, right? And then a proctor has to come up to you. You have to wait till the proctor gets to you. And I was in the 20th row back. And then you shut your computer. You have to take your driver's license, your entrance ID, follow the proctor like a freaking puppy down to the entrance, drop off your driver's license as collateral, go to the bathroom, and then the freaking proctor stood outside the stall to listen to me pee.
Yeah.
While, to make sure I wasn't talking to anyone, and then walked me back in where I was able to reclaim my collateral.
Yeah. They watched me while I washed my hands too, so.
It's what the frick? Can I have
It's a little over the top.
It was a little over the top. Yeah, it was wild.
Well, and before we jump in, I do want to, since we just talked about Kim K, I'm just going to share my two thoughts on this whole subject.
Okay.
First off, I think she would be a much better served donating and spending and investing a lot of her millions and millions of dollars into organizations and initiatives that are staffed with lawyers who are making much less than most lawyers and are actually really good at their jobs at promoting the causes she's talking about. I get what you're saying. I think it's a better use of her time. The second thing I was going to say is I do think it's really funny seeing all the Instagram posts showing her studying for the bar exam in her bikini by the pool. And then you see all these comments below like, I wore the same sweatshirt for 6 days. I had bags under my eyes. I guess you shouldn't care what you look like when you're studying for the bar exam.
Well, I guess not everyone is being filmed on national television while studying for the baby bar. So, she's got a lot on her plate, I do hope she's able to retake it and pass. So, Kim K, I wish you the best. Good luck, my friend. I wish we were actually friends. All right, so now that our feelings about Kim K and the baby bar are out into the ether, let's talk a little bit about law school. So I just want to preface this whole discussion with, I really think your law school experience depends on where you went. I mean, wouldn't you agree with that?
100%.
Yeah, let me just cross-examine you right here, right?
It does.
Don't you agree with me? Correct, counsel?
It does, because it's just like any other undergraduate institution. Absolutely. It's a lot of different cultures, a lot of different curriculums, honestly, and that surprises people that you learn different things at different schools because of the requirements as well. Absolutely.
So I would agree, and I would say whether you're inspired to become a lawyer because you saw Suits and you just loved the outfits that Meghan Markle was wearing, or you watched To Kill a Mockingbird and read the book and you were really inspired to defend people who are accused like Atticus Finch, either way, I think it's really important to find a school that fits your personality.
Right.
And I know that sounds a little ridiculous to say when it comes to law school, because at the end of the day, it's a professional program that should teach you the same basic concepts and turn you out the same way any other school should, which is to be a competent lawyer who should be able to pass the state bar exam. But I think, like you're saying, each school has this different culture.
It does, and you get exposed to every schools have different reputations, right? So
Absolutely.
Baylor's known as being, for the practice court program, of turning out people who are good in the courtroom.
Yeah, we are I think someone called Baylor the Marine Corps boot camp of law schools, which is, I feel, that is an accurate description.
Oh, I know you do. You Baylor grads are extremely proud of your practice court experience.
Oh, yes. Yes, it's...
But you've got that, and you've got, some of the Ivy League schools are known for turning out intellectual people who go on to become Supreme Court justices or go on to kind of set precedent when it comes to constitutional law.
Absolutely.
And so what you want to do with your law school, or with your law career, it matters somewhat where you go to law school. At least it'll make it more enjoyable and maybe give you a foundation.
And also, too, it helps you if you have an idea of what you want to do after law school. And we'll get into that later. But first of all, for those of our listeners who may not actually know us in real life, I don't know if we have any of those. I hope we do. I went to Baylor Law, right? So that's in Waco, Texas. And like we said, that's the Marine Corps boot camps. And Baylor is on a quarter system, so we're a pretty accelerated school. And I graduated with a JD and then also with a concentration in natural resources and environmental law.
Yeah.
Shocker. Surprise, y'all.
Yeah. Watch the gas pipeline episode. You'll figure that out real quick.
You'll find out why. Yes. And Austin, my friend, where did you go?
I went to Texas Tech in Lubbock, Texas, base of the Panhandle. And we're known for just being a very practical school. We have a lot more required courses because they want us to take all the courses that are going to be on the bar exam. And so we didn't have a whole lot of elective options, which I was fine with. It definitely prepared us for the bar exam. And Texas Tech, actually, the interesting thing about it is we've got a very high concentration of former JAG lawyers that are on our faculty there.
That is so interesting.
And so, for our listeners, JAG is lawyers that are in the military, whether it's Marines, Air Force, military, Army, or the Navy. And I don't know that I can pinpoint a reason other than you end up with a few people that are in JAG, and it attracts, like attracts like, and so some of the professors and faculty members just kind of started flocking to Texas Tech. And so that created a unique environment for us just because of that military history as well.
I think that's so interesting. I would really like to have someone from JAG on the podcast interview because I think that would be a fascinating experience.
Yeah, it's a very unique system too because it's different than our civil system. But the good thing is that we've got all these different types of law schools, but all of them, in Texas, for example, you have to go to an accredited law school.
You do.
To sit for the bar exam, and then you have to pass the bar to become, or you have to graduate from an accredited law school, pass the bar to become a lawyer here in Texas.
And also in Texas, you have to pass an ethics exam.
Right.
You also have to pass in your first year, while we don't have the baby bar like California does, we do have you have to submit documents. I think it's like your intention to study law.
Yeah.
And you have to get fingerprinted. So fun fact, if someone is ever claiming to be you and you're a lawyer in Texas, you can say, hey, check their fingerprints, because every single attorney, at least in recent history, should have been fingerprinted while they were in law school. So our prints are all on file with the State Bar of Texas.
Yeah.
I remember getting my digital fingerprints done. I was like, this is funny.
Yeah. Well, and the kind of tough thing about that is you can get that, you go through that, you begin that process your first year, and then they have to determine, they being the Board of Law Examiners, has to determine that you are fit to sit for the bar exam.
Yes, a character and fitness evaluation.
Right. And I won't go into great details because I don't want to give it away who I'm talking about, but there was a guy at my law school that by the time he took the bar, they hadn't cleared him yet. By the time he passed the bar, they hadn't cleared him yet. Had to petition the Supreme Court of Texas to give him his law license, or at least make a ruling on it after, probably 6 months after he'd already been told he passed the bar exam.
Oh my gosh, that's awful.
Yeah. Now he's a phenomenal lawyer, doing a lot of great things, and actually making a lot of moves on presidential law, setting precedent on certain areas of the law in criminal defense, and doing a great job. So I'm really proud of the guy. It was kind of messed up, the process.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a little ridiculous. Yeah. I had a friend in law school. I think it was her roommate that was actually throwing the party, and she got a noise violation. And that was a big to-do to try and explain that to the state bar when she was applying or filling out her character and fitness evaluation.
Yeah,
I don't even think it was her fault. She just happened to live there.
Yeah, no, I had the same thing happen to me.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I had a public noise violation, publicly, or disorderly conduct, for throwing a party at my apartment.
Ridiculous, ridiculous. Anyway, so let's dig into some questions, because I know there's so many questions, and I remember way back in the day when I was Googling, I was like, so what is law school really like? Can you read like T14 forum? By the way, T14 stands for top 14, and those are the top 14, for those of you who don't know, law schools ranked in the US, which is important for certain reasons, and we'll get into that later. But there was just like not a lot of information out there about what law school is actually like and what questions to consider before you go to law school. Because let me tell you, the number of friends that I have who were told and followed the advice of, if you don't know what to do after undergrad, apply and go to law school. It can't hurt to have a JD. It's astounding. Yeah.
I mean, I think you and I may be on different sides of the fence on that, because I think I have a lot of friends that did that and then never practiced law, but their JD has helped them tremendously in other areas of
I have very
business.
Specific feelings on this.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Yes. So, and we'll get into those. Okay, we'll get into that now.
Sure.
So here's my thing, is that law school can be very expensive depending on where you go. If you go to a private institution like Baylor versus a public school like, say, University of Texas at Austin. So the tuition can be really different. So if you're taking out a lot of loans to pay, and then you don't even use your JD afterward, then what was the point of putting yourself thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars in debt, right? Yeah. Unless you're getting some sort of real swanky job as maybe a lobbyist. Okay, I can see that helping. You have a JD, you're a lobbyist, you can read up on campaign finance laws, which are extremely detailed and also really boring.
Yeah.
Okay, that could help. So I think at the end of the day, my feeling is go to law school if you want to be a lawyer, you want to be a judge, you want to go into politics, you want to be in public policy, or you want to be a lobbyist. If you just are like, I have no idea what I want to do with my life, maybe take a gap year and go do something that you find interesting and fulfilling, or go teach children English in the country of Georgia. Something like that.
Yeah.
Do something that fulfills you so that you actually understand what you want out of life instead of sinking truckloads of money into law school.
Yeah.
And then realizing, oh, frick, I hate this. And then not finishing. Because I think once you start law school, you should finish.
Yeah, and I had some classmates that didn't, just decided it wasn't for them, And on the flip side, I've seen people that have gone and gotten their JD, and you're accelerated more into what I'm about to say if you've actually practiced for a few years and you have a law license. But I've seen them go into real estate, go into high-level executive consulting, different things like that, where the problem-solving skills learned in law school really were helpful in getting them the job, and then helpful in them executing the job because of the way they learned to think like a lawyer through the process. And so I've seen that too. Now, I think the financial issue, that's one thing when we talk about later on, like what law school you want to get into. That's something I definitely have a strong opinion about. But I do agree that just going to law school because you don't know what you want to do, I agree with you on that. I don't think that's a good idea.
It's terrible.
But have an idea of, if you don't want to be a lawyer, you can still go to law school and use that to your benefit if you do it the right way.
If you do it the right way. Very important. Okay, so first question, I was Googling and thinking, what are questions that are commonly asked last night? And the first one I kept seeing, and I was a little surprised by this, how long is law school?
Yeah.
I thought everyone knew it was usually 3 years.
I find that actually most people don't know that.
Which surprises me, actually.
Some people think it's 2, like a master's program. Some people think it's 7, like an
MD.
Yeah,
guys, we're not that highly trained.
We're not that highly trained at all. We're not that highly trained at all. And I think another thing along with that is that you don't, unless I'm missing something here. As a doctor, you go in and you become an oncologist or an orthopedic.
A specialist.
So, you specialize in it while you're in school. In law school, you can take elective classes, but you don't come out of just base law school with any kind of special designation. There's not, you don't go in there to become, you can go to be a criminal defense lawyer, but you don't come out with a criminal defense law degree or anything like that.
Sure. So I think what you're thinking of is residency, because you can be put into a rotation.
Right.
You have to match first, right? So one of my girlfriends from college, recently, I think it was a year ago, she matched into a surgical residency, and so she's now doing surgery.
Right.
So she's not really going to be a surgeon until she completes the additional schooling required for surgery, as well as completing her residency requirements for surgery. And those requirements are a lot more than, for example, just a general internist.
Yeah.
But so I get what you're saying. In law schools, at the end of the day, I graduated, we all get JDs.
Yeah.
And then I graduated with a concentration in real estate and natural resources. Okay, that doesn't mean I'm a specialist in that.
Right.
I just took some more classes in that area.
Right.
And in fact, there's a really specific legal definition about who can call themselves specialists in the area of law. In fact, you have to practice first, don't you?
Yeah, you do. And you have to, in Texas, you have to meet a certain amount of requirements, and the Board of Legal Specialization determines those requirements. And if you pass the criteria, then you can actually say, I specialize in family law, personal injury law,
and
whatever.
You usually have to take a test. You usually have to have X number of trials. Right. It's hard. Right. It's hard to get those specializations.
Absolutely. Now, the LSAT, the next topic we have here, that's something that, so one thing I'll tell everybody is you don't pass the LSAT. So if anybody tells you they passed the LSAT, they didn't take the LSAT, or they didn't understand what they were doing when they took the LSAT. Because you don't pass the LSAT, you get a score.
Yeah.
And what is the LSAT?
So the LSAT is the law school entrance exam. And so what it does is it's broken down into 3 parts. You have, gosh, it's been so long. You have logic games, and then you have like a reading and writing comprehension, and then you have, what's the third?
Logical reasoning.
Logical reasoning, there you go. So you have these 3 sections. They're each scored separately, and then your total score is out of 170?
180.
180?
Yes, 180 is a perfect score.
I PTSD.
180 is a perfect score, but
no one gets 180.
Yeah, and 170, just to put people in perspective, is like the top 95th percentile of anybody that takes the exam.
People who get 170s are those who get into like UT or Harvard,
Yale,
or Columbia, Yale, so on and so forth.
Right. And it's one thing, one of the biggest pieces, because you probably get this a lot. A lot of students or family friends I know that are thinking about going to law school, they want to ask all these questions. Should I study for it? Should I not? I see this in your notes. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but I agree. You got to take a prep course.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's a weird test. It's not like the SAT, which you should probably, I took a prep course for that too in high school.
Did?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
I did. Well, I wasn't not as smart as you, Andrea. So, some of us, meathead jocks have to work on some of these things. But you got to take a prep course because it's a weird way of thinking.
It's really strange.
And the test is designed for you not to be able to finish by thinking fully through all the, you got to learn how to the tricks and all those kinds of things.
It's not intuitive at all. And I think the LSAT, when I took it at the time, I thought it was ridiculous. I hated it. I took it twice. I was super sick both times.
Oh,
the first time I could barely write my name. I was on such heavy antibiotics and my head was so. And then the second time I was mildly better, but still very sick.
Yeah.
And so, but at the end of the day, like you said, the test is not intuitive, and it's all about learning how to take the test.
Yeah.
And so I know people say for the SAT and for the AP exams, it's learning how to take the test. This is completely different.
Right.
Like, you would not know how to take this test unless you take a prep course.
Right.
Because it's not testing basic knowledge and understanding. And when they say it tests your ability to be successful in law school, I hate to admit it.
I don't hate to admit it.
I think it's actually applicable, especially to the bar exam, because you have to learn how to take the bar exam.
Yeah.
And so I think that concept translates. So if you can learn early on that law school exams and the bar exam are all about learning the process of taking the test, you'll do great.
Yeah. I think so the part I was going to say, I mean, I kind of dissect the two. I think it teaches you how to take how to learn the process. The content has nothing to do with law school.
Oh, the content is a whole bunch of bull hooey, let me tell you. You never think about this in law school.
Right, and that's what people get confused about is we'll just leave it to say it has nothing to do with what you're going to learn in law school. You just got to figure out how to work the system and get a score that can get you into school.
Absolutely. So take a prep course.
For sure, it's worth the money.
It's worth the money, and make sure some people can float through college without studying. I've seen it happen because they're just wildly smart. Take the prep course, and people need to understand if they can self-study, like doing, I think it's like the LSAT Bible or whatever, you can self-study.
There's a bunch of them out there,
Yeah, or if you do better with an instructor, I would tell people pay for the instructor.
Yeah.
Because it's really important. If you have a specific law school you want to get into, you need the best LSAT score you can possibly get. Yeah. So anyway.
And in your comment about people kind of just breezing through undergrad, not studying a whole lot, actually segues really good into talking about the first year of law school.
And it does.
Because there's a not stigma, but there's a feeling and kind of a little bit of a myth, some of it true, about how scary the first year can be.
Yeah, so I've heard this phrase before, and I think it's fun. It didn't apply to me, but it may apply to other people, like for those who went to UVA. First year, they scare you. Second year, they work you. And third year is like lull or whatever. You know, it's chill, it's fun, you do whatever you want. So at Baylor, that's actually not true. At Baylor, your third year is absolutely atrocious. You do practice court, you have 500 plus pages of reading a day, you have Socratic method where you're cold called, and you have a bunch of mini trials that take a day, and then you have a huge, giant, big trial. You're doing all of this on top of, in my situation, studying for the bar exam, because I took the bar while I was still in school. So you don't really sleep.
Yeah.
It's terrible. But I will say, most of the people in my class passed the bar the first try because of the horrific experience of practice court, which is actually the most useful and helpful class I ever took in law school.
Sure.
So it was a pain, but actually it was extremely helpful and worth it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And breaking down the first year, I mean, I think one thing that a lot of people don't understand is the process that you go through in your law school classes. So first thing is we're reading cases for the most part in most classes.
And that's something too. Reading cases, it's different. Like, even if you were a literature or a history major, reading case law is completely different. Like,
big time.
You have to learn the process to read case law. And you have to understand, like when you're cold called, which we'll have to explain what cold call and Socratic method is momentarily, you have to understand what's important.
Yeah.
And you don't really, someone can explain it to you, but until you actually apply those processes and read enough cases to understand what's important, you're not going to get it.
Well, there's a couple things with it. It's not like reading a textbook, because you're not just reading for comprehension. You're reading for a purpose of spotting things that are in the case.
Yeah, for issue spotting.
And the language is different when you first start. And so, it may take you 3 hours to read 10 pages because you got to stop and look up a word, and you got to stop and figure this out, and then you don't understand it when you first start out. Whereas maybe later in law school, it takes 30 minutes. So the idea is we read cases every day before we prepare for class, and there's one exam at the end of most courses.
Yeah, so y'all, fun fact, 100% of your grade is based on one exam.
Right.
Pressure.
Yeah, and it's on a bell curve in most schools.
It is.
To where you and I could get maybe one question different on the exam, but because of the break in the curve, there's 50 students, and say like at Texas Tech, the median grade given was a C+. So most of the people in the class made a C+, and then they rank the exams from number of 1 to 50, and that's how they distribute the grades. And it's all based on one exam. You don't get any other shots at any other thing.
And there's no extra credit. That's not a thing in law school.
At Tech, and they might have done this at Baylor too, we had an anonymous exam number that we used, and so the professor didn't even know whose exam they were grading when they graded your exam. So it wasn't like because you were really participated a lot in class, you got more.
Yeah, that made no difference.
Yeah. And so that's what a lot of people don't realize and can't wrap their minds around is there's not more than one test in most classes. It's you got that final exam and that's it.
And that's it.
And all through the process, on top of that, you're dealing with the Socratic method.
Yes. What is the Socratic method?
I want to have you explain this one.
Isn't Legally Blonde? I'm trying to remember.
I figured we would talk about Legally Blonde, which I still haven't seen any of those, but I assume most people.
Okay, you don't need to see the second one, just the first one.
I think I'm good.
Oh my gosh, Austin. My heart is like bleeding right now.
I just don't think I would have the patience to sit through it.
Oh, Reese Witherspoon delivers an incredible performance.
I'm sure it's highly realistic as well.
Yes, because everyone wears hot pink suits with pillbox hats to law school.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, maybe not so much in that category. Anyway, the cold calling and Socratic method. So cold calling Socratic method, comes from the concept of Socrates, right? The old Greek philosopher. But what it translates into in real life is you're all in class, you've done your reading, and then your professor either breezes, saunters, or, hurls him or herself into the room, depending on the persona they adopt for how they teach, which is the thing. It is a thing. They all have characters that they play in the classroom, and they start cold calling you, which means it'll be, Miss Turner, tell me about this specific portion of the fact pattern in Jones versus Smith. Okay, well, why did the appellate court decide to reverse the trial court in regards to X legal principle? And you need to know it.
When they ask, and in a lot of situations, they ask you to stand.
Yes, and Baylor, you always stand.
Yeah.
You always stand when you answer, just like as if you were speaking to a judge.
Right.
And so you answer, and then if you answer correctly, usually they'll go for a few more questions, and then finally they'll mercifully say, thank you, Ms. Turner, sit down, and then they'll move on to the person either next to you, or sometimes they'll just popcorn across the room.
Yeah. And so it can be intimidating because you don't know if you're going to get called on. You got to be prepared. And even if you are prepared, you may not fully understand what you're answering questions about.
Well, yeah, and especially your first year, because sometimes it's hard to understand what's important and what's not. Right? And also, it's in some schools, and it's this way in Baylor, if you didn't do the reading or you don't understand the reading and you can't answer the questions when cold called, you get kicked out of class.
Yeah.
And then you can only have a certain number of absences. And then once you get to your third year and you're in practice court, if you can't answer the question, you get what's called a memo. So you're assigned basically to write an essay on top of all of your extra work and reading. So it's really important to understand how to prepare for class by understanding the key concepts in the cases and knowing what parts to really take note of based on the syllabus.
Yeah, and that's one intimidating part of the first year. And I think a lot of people, I'll be honest, I think a lot of lawyers like to beef up how tough and just how terrible the first year law school is. I mean, it's not easy. To me, it's like anything else. You put the time into it, you're going to be okay. I think that a lot of lawyers like to puff our egos and talking about how tough it is. It is not the worst thing in the world. It's something that you can get through, and eventually your mind starts to understand what you're dealing with and wraps itself around it.
I like to think the first year is a transition period.
Good point. Yeah.
You're learning to think like a lawyer. You're completely overhauling your whole way of thinking, right? Because lawyers don't think like normal people.
Right.
I see something and I immediately start issue spotting. The liability pops up. I'm looking at this. I'm thinking, how can I mitigate the damages here? This is not how normal people think.
Right.
And so in law school, you're transitioning into that mindset because in your first year, one of the most important things you can do is learn to issue spot. And what is issue spotting?
Figuring out when you're reading through something, okay, where are the legal issues? Like, okay, here's something where maybe he breached a contract. Oh, here's where they actually, this guy may have injured this person by doing this. And so you understand the law, and then you figure out, you're reading this fact pattern and figuring out how does this fit into this puzzle that is whether this law applies or not.
Because in your first year, you're learning, the elements to basic tort law, breach of contract, introduction to property law, some criminal law. And so you'll, for example, a lot of tests your first year, like torts and contracts, you're given basically this long word problem, and it's Susie and Johnny were going for a walk. Cameron's bubble machine exploded and created this super slick walkway that was maybe on his property, maybe not, but everyone thought it was his property. And then because of it, a knife somehow magically appeared, and Johnny and Susie trip, and then Johnny gets stuck by the knife, and an ambulance gets called, and the ambulance is derailed because of the foam. Spot the issues. It's wild.
Right.
And you have a certain amount of time, and you have to answer issue spot. And then once you issue spot, you find the issues. You're like, okay, I'm seeing property law issues. I'm seeing tort issues like negligence, so on and so forth.
And that forms a foundation for what you build on, throughout your first year in law school and the rest of your career as well. So let's talk about the second year of law school, where you kind of understand what's going on, and then you get involved in these things like mock trial and being on law review and all this kind of stuff. What are all those things?
So those are legal extracurriculars that, I hate to say this, make actually a huge difference when you are applying to internships, fellowships, and clerkships year 2L summer, which you should. Every summer, you should always try to work somewhere.
Yeah.
Not only for your resume, but also to just legit get experience and see if you actually like the practice area.
Right.
The number of people who say, I want to do IP law, and then go and shadow and clerk somewhere, come back and they say, oh my gosh, it was so boring, I don't want to do that. And how would you know unless you actually went and clerked, if you will. Anyhow, so mock trial is basically just what it sounds like. People have mock trial in high school. Mock trial in law school is that on steroids, because you're actually applying legal principles.
Right.
Then you have moot court. And moot court, right, it's basically you are arguing before the fake appellate court. Right. So you have an appellate and an appellee, and you're arguing points of legal error.
Yeah. It's like a simulation of what you would do at the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals or the U.S. Supreme Court, Texas Supreme Court. It's a simulation of that, just like a mock trial is a simulation of an actual trial in front of a jury.
Absolutely. And also, if anyone's interested, we interviewed Chad Rubeck, who is an appellate attorney, so go look at that episode if you're interested in appellate law. And it's really important to do these, and then law review.
Yeah.
You talk about law review.
So we have these journals that are basically what I call research journals, that they publish articles which actually can be used to cite by judges and lawyers in their actual cases. And it is you have to apply to get on there, and you have to have certain grades to get on certain journals. And so it's another thing that employers look for, because it's prestigious and it also just gives you more research experience as well.
And depending on the school you go to, there can be several or there can be one. At Baylor, there was one. At SMU, there are several. Yeah,
we've got like 3 or 4 at Tech.
Yeah. So, but being on a journal is usually very prestigious, and it's a good thing.
Now, why do they say that third year in most experiences is chill? Now, for you and I, both wasn't chill because of you had practice court and I had other things going on, so it wasn't a chill thing for me either. But why is the third year typically chill for a lot of law students?
Well, gosh, I just have to rely on what people have told me.
That's a good point. Maybe you're the wrong person to ask that question to. I mean, from my experience, it's just because most of the time you've gotten all your main stuff out of the way. You're used to how the process works and the system works. And a lot of people going into the third year traditionally, this doesn't happen as much these days, but traditionally, a lot of the law students already have their job offer lined up going into the third year. And so you're not as stressed out about what am I doing after this is over with.
I think that's true. And then also, too, in a lot of third years, they'll do what are called clinics. So instead of taking a class, they're volunteering with a clinic. And that could be helping with adoption law, or that could be at Baylor, we have a clinic that's focused on helping veterans. Because Baylor is very, very vet friendly.
Sure.
And so this clinic would help veterans with housing issues, lease issues, so on and so forth.
Yeah, and there's things like externships. Like I did an externship with the DA's office in Lubbock, and it was basically...
Oh, you did? I didn't.
I did in my third year. That was my first exposure to criminal law.
I had no idea. Look at that. Y'all, I'm learning something new every day. So it's usually a lot easier because you're taking less classes. You're doing these hands-on experiences, which is more fun, I think, than just being in a classroom. And you have more time. Reading cases doesn't take as long. People are happier because you're almost done with law school. And traditionally, most people graduate in May?
May.
And then the bar exam is in July.
Right.
So most people don't do what I did, but just take the bar exam in school. I actually liked doing that better. But
I did too.
Yeah. Okay, you did too?
Yeah,
there you go. So we liked that better, but most people, my husband included, they graduate and then they take 3 months to just study for the bar.
And there's our segue to the bar exam.
And that is the bar exam.
Now that one is as bad as everyone says it is.
It is. It's pretty atrocious. It's miserable.
And they just changed it. I'll go off of what I know that it was whenever we were in school.
That's right. I'm upset that they've changed it.
Yeah, so we're just going to talk about it from our experience.
Our experience back in the day.
It's a 3-day test, 2.5 days technically. First day is a half day, and then the next 2 days are full 8-hour days, and you get a lunch break.
Yeah,
but
you do.
And we don't need to go into all the specifics of what's on the test and everything like that.
We should probably explain the sections though.
Sure.
So the first day, your first half day is going to be, 3-4 hours? I think it's 3 hours. And it's a breakdown. You have X number of questions on criminal procedure and civil procedure in the state of Texas. Okay, and then day 2 is like 100 MBE questions?
It's 100 in the morning, 100 in the afternoon.
Okay, so 200 questions of the MBE, which was that like the multi-bar?
Multi-state bar exam, so it covers 6 subjects, property, constitutional law, criminal procedure, criminal law, evidence, and torts.
Of course, torts, and contracts.
Maybe,
right?
Okay, so maybe one of those, well, I'm off on one of those in there then.
Anyway, so it covers everything that you learned in your first and second years of law school, so all of the elements.
And the interesting thing about that part is it's given across all states, and so
which is strange to me.
Yeah, it's not state specific, so that's why it's just general concepts. It's not like, okay, what rule of evidence, could this, it's different.
I actually find it to be harder because it's not state specific, because typically your law, at least my experience in law school, is that generally you are taught state and federal law, not what the model codes are, right? There's this nebulous thing called the model codes. Okay, well, a lot of states have adopted them. Texas is funny. We have our own way of doing things.
Yeah, we're Texas.
Holla. And so that's one of the reasons studying for the bar is really important, because you have to tweak your understanding of the law to also understand these model laws to answer the 200 questions at the MB. And then the third day is just a truckload of essays.
All essays. I'm not even going to remember all the subject areas it covers, but it's all Texas-specific law.
Texas-specific law. I think it's 3 essays in the morning, 3 essays in the afternoon.
6 and 6 is what it used to be. Yeah.
Oh, never mind. It is 6 and 6.
See, that's the thing. It's one of those traumatic
PTSD.
experiences. That's the thing, your mind blocks trauma. So you get through that and you brain dump it, which is why you should take a bar study course, because you don't want to have to take that thing more than once.
No. Oh my gosh. Okay, so for people who are like, oh yeah, no, I'll get a cheaper course, or I don't really need to study. They'll teach me everything I need to know in law school. No, not even if you went to Baylor, which has traditionally usually the highest pass bar rate in the state. Always study for the bar. Yeah. I don't understand when people say, I'm fine. No.
Yeah, you're not fine.
And I took Barbary. I liked it. Is it probably more expensive than most bar exam prep courses? Yes. Do I think it's worth it? Yes, because I only had to take the Texas bar once. Yeah. I will pay extra to not have to suffer again.
And I know people that had to take it more than once, had to take it more than twice. It's just tough. It's a tough deal because it's stressful, and it takes so long to prepare for that thing that it just takes a huge chunk of your life away.
Yeah, it is a huge chunk.
Not a huge chunk of your life, but you know what I mean.
It's hard, and one of my colleagues, she's also barred, and she passed the bar exam in New York as well, in addition to passing that exam in Texas. And I just remember asking her, I was like, so how does that work, like when you're working? She's like, well, it really sucks because you work, 7 to 10 hours a day, and then you come home and study for another 3 to 4 hours a night. Yeah. I was like, wow, that sounds awful.
Yeah, I knew an older lawyer that I worked with that did that as well, and yeah, it sounds intense.
Yeah, miserable. So anyway, now that you've understood that you all have to study for the bar and pass it, how do you get into a good law school?
Yeah, well, and what you said on here is exactly right. I mean, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you are, it's a numbers game. LSAT, GPA, top 2. There's other soft factors like your personal statement and strong recommendation letters. Or, for me, and I have no problem admitting this, I went to tech in undergrad. That helped me with my admission into tech law because I was so involved in tech undergrad that there was some help there for me because I stayed at the same school. Yeah. And that changes things versus had I tried to go to Baylor or SMU or some other place.
Absolutely. And there are some schools too that will do like a 3-and-3 program. Yes. Like Baylor, for example.
Tech does that too.
Yeah.
I didn't do it, but
I didn't go to Baylor for undergrad, but you can do Baylor undergrad, then like a 3-year accelerated at Baylor, and then pop yourself into the law school automatically. Also, some schools randomly, I didn't actually know this until halfway through law school when I noticed how many people in my class were former collegiate athletes. For some reason, Baylor actually tends to try and select for people who are collegiate athletes, even if you're D3 like me. And I asked one of my best friends who later went on to be the PC associate, which is kind of like an admin position that's very prestigious. And she explained to me the reason Baylor places an emphasis on collegiate athletes is because, I was swimming in college, and you train anywhere from 2.5 to 6 hours a day on top of your full course load. So if you can do that on top of maintaining a good GPA and having a good LSAT score, clearly you can handle time management.
Exactly.
So, and you were a football player in college.
For a very, very brief time, I want to emphasize that.
Okay.
but yeah, being able to balance, and I mean, probably for me, what was more salient was I was very involved in a lot of different things throughout my college career, and being able to balance all those things. And you touched on this earlier. Plenty of classmates I went to that were brilliant because they were brilliant and because their degrees that they chose in undergrad, I'm not knocking their degrees, but they just weren't challenged in their degree because they were so brilliant. Well, they got to law school, and all of a sudden, this is a totally different way of learning. It flips everything on its head.
It's a very humbling experience.
Yeah.
You get to law school, and you were probably the best of the best at whatever school you're coming out of, and you get to law school, and you are with everyone who is the best of the best in their law school, and it's a humbling experience.
See, and I think I was mentally prepared enough to know, like, okay, I'm going to start making a bunch of C's, and I'm okay with that. So it actually didn't affect me too much because I think I mentally prepared myself going into it. I have no problem admitting that to everybody about that. But I think that I also chose a degree in undergrad that challenged me, and so I was used to having to work hard.
Wait, what did you do in
I did
undergrad?
finance.
Oh, numbers.
I'm a finance guy. So, so I had to work hard at that, and so I was used to putting the time in. It wasn't like I got a degree that was really easy for me, And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying that's how it just worked my brain to where I was like, okay, you got to put the work in.
Understandable. All right, next up, affording law school.
I have very strong opinions on this.
Kick it off.
On the back end of it. I think that a lot of students going into law school get way too caught up in what law school they want to go to and they don't put enough thought into what is it going to cost me if I have to take out student loans. I blame the law schools for that, and I mean, it's their marketing to try to get people in, and tuition costs are rising and everything, but it can be, if you go into law school and you come out with 6 figures in debt, it's going to be difficult for you to take maybe a job you really want to take because you're passionate about it.
Yes.
If you want to go take, and there are some loan forgiveness programs through government work. I know that's to be true. But throwing that aside, whether you qualify or don't qualify, if you want to go take a lower paying job for a cause you really care about, you may not be able to afford that with the law school debt and the minimum payments you have to make on those loans. And you got to think through that. And so being able to go somewhere where either they throw money at you or at least the cost of tuition is sustainable or reasonable enough when you get out is extremely important because it takes the handcuffs off of you when you graduate.
Absolutely. It definitely allows you to have a wider option because I have several friends who, I'm sure a lot of people in our audience hear about Big Law, right? So these are like Case and White or Skadden or Haynes and Boone even, right?
Yeah.
So these are all Norton Rose Fulbright. Are they still called that?
I don't know, but we'll call them brand name law firms.
Brand name law firms. They're really big. Think Suits.
Right, exactly.
The law firm that Harvey is in Suits, is the perfect example of a big law firm.
Yeah.
And these are the ones that people dress in suits.
And they make the big money coming out their first year.
They make a lot of money. These are the ones who are making, $180,000, $160,000 their first year. And let me tell you, no first year is worth that amount of money.
I agree.
They are not, because they don't know what the heck they're doing.
I agree from an intellectual standard, but you got to look at the business and the dollars because of the hourly rate they're billing them out at and how they work them into the ground and how many hours they work.
Because they're discovery monkeys?
Right.
Yeah.
But if you do the math, if they're billing 200, 220 hours a month at $295, $325 an hour, I'm not going to do the math on the spot, but that's how much revenue they're bringing to the firm. The delta between what they're paying them and what they're bringing to the firm makes business sense. But I get what you're saying. Intellectually, they're not bringing as much value to the table as $180,000 sounds like.
Absolutely. And so the reason I mentioned Big Law is because a lot of people, they go through law school, congratulations, you've done well, you have your choice, pick of the litter, if you will, for what jobs you can get. Maybe you're really interested in helping young moms who are going through a divorce that are homemakers and they can't pay a lot of money, but it's something that you're really passionate about and you want to help with. Okay, you're probably not going to be paid $180,000 if that's the area of law you want to work in. Versus if you go to somewhere like, I don't know, I'm not going to name names. You go to a big law firm, you're paid $180,000, and you're working 1 million hours a day, and you're basically doing discovery and due diligence all day. You probably are not as passionate about sitting in front of a screen, looking at tax records and blueprints and drawings all day.
Right.
But you make a lot of money, but they work you to the ground, and you're not passionate about it, and so there's a lot of burnout there.
Big time.
And so if you have a lot of debt, I see this happen a lot. Students will they graduate and they'll take a big law job. They'll work there for 3-4 years, trying to get as much money as they can out of it to pay off their debts. And then they burn out and they either quit practicing law entirely or they shift to a boutique or a smaller firm and actually finally are happy.
They find their passion project or something, not project, but they find the job, exactly right, that they're more passionate about. I think you also see, and this is something I actually just thought about just now as we're talking about this, but the way that this whole debt cycle works is you come out and you've got a bunch of debt, so you take the big law job. Well, sometimes I've seen this happen, and I'm sure you have too, some colleagues and friends where, then they just start spending the salary, and then they get in the debt cycle of, I got to keep the house, and I got to keep the cars, and I got to keep the private school tuition up, and then all of a sudden you're stuck in that big law job for your entire career, and you're miserable, and it leads to the stereotype of lawyers hating their jobs.
And all jokes aside, I do want to be really serious for a second. I don't think the general populace knows, the amount of suicide and substance abuse rates.
Yeah.
I mean, it's out of all of professions, lawyers are some of the highest.
They crank that into our brains when we start law school. And we even have a special helpline with our state bar for anonymous reports of people who we think are having substance abuse or suicidal issues.
Yeah, I mean, I did a study abroad program in law school with this one kid. He was great. He was happy. He, not long after law school, he graduated, had a good job, got married, and then killed himself a year later. And no one had any idea it was coming. And so, I do want people to understand that practicing law is really tough on the psyche. And also, if you're in that debt cycle, right, you take that big law job, you hate your job every day, but your significant other is used to the lifestyle that you're providing. You now have children that you don't want to send to public school for whatever reason. Not commenting on public school here, good or bad, you make your decision, but it's hard. And then you have the car, you have the nice car, you have the nice car payments. I like to call it the golden handcuffs.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Once you have those golden handcuffs on, it's really, really, really hard to take them off.
Right.
And so if someone is going to do that big law job, go in, save.
Yeah.
Save.
Yeah.
Pay off your debts and get out.
Yeah. Well, and if anybody wants to ever talk to me about that and those types of things, or either one of us, feel free to DM us because we got some opinions and we've been around the block at least a little bit to see some of these experiences from us or from other people.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. And then not our last question. We're getting close to the end though. Salary, which we've kind of already talked about, but we'll go through it really quick. So we've talked about the big law salary.
Yeah.
So
we have.
So I also want to disabuse people of this notion that if you are a lawyer, you automatically make truckloads of money. You don't.
That used to be something that, I think our profession used to make a lot more relative to other professions. I think that it's leveled out quite a bit, and you can make a good living as a lawyer.
Yeah.
There are certain people that figure out the game and become very wealthy, but there's a lot of different ways to do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways. You can be a defense attorney who represents, whatever the modern equivalent of nicotine companies are. Or you can be a plaintiff's lawyer and hit 1 or 2 really big, horrible chemical burns or aviation accident cases, make a lot of money that way, and you're set, kind of like a Grisham situation. Or you can just have a steady income doing something you're happy with at a boutique or a small law firm, and you're not going to be making 180 plus 300,000, but you're doing something that you're passionate about, bringing in a comfortable living. You can be an assistant district attorney or a district attorney. You'll be paid a government wage.
Yep.
I've seen teachers be paid the same or more than some assistant DAs.
Right, me too, depending on the county.
Which is wild to me. And then you could be an assistant United States attorney. eventually you can work your way up to United States Attorney. AUSAs actually get paid very well.
They do. Yeah, the federal prosecutors get paid a lot.
Yeah, so that actually surprised me. And then the last thing is you can go work for a federal agency like the IRS or some environmental agency. I'm trying to think of others off the top of my head. I mean,
there's a lot of regulatory agencies within the state and federal government.
The Texas Railroad Commission, that's an example of one. You can go work there. Your commission is also commission. Your pay is going to be government pay.
Well, and I think that this topic actually illustrates the next 2 points about the real world experience it gives you, and then do you really need a JD? Lawyers and
we talked about this a little bit earlier.
We did, but the idea that lawyers and the mindset of people that go to law school, they touch a lot of different industries, and so even though maybe you don't think of yourself as maybe a traditional lawyer, you could end up working for an agency or working internally at a company. There's just all sorts of ways you can use that if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. And then the last one is, will you be happy as a lawyer? I do think that's something people need to think about.
Yeah, I do. And I think that I hate the stereotype.
Yeah.
I think there's reasons for the stereotype that all lawyers are unhappy. I think that people and lawyers are really bad at, once they are unhappy, making a choice to get out of that rat race that they're in and make an intentional, conscious effort to change paths. I think that's the real question is, if you're going down a path you don't like, fix it.
Yeah, don't be a victim of inertia.
Yes, exactly.
Just fix it. You can always fix it until you can't.
Yeah, that's very true. So I guess the things to take away from this is that you should dress comfortably when studying for the baby bar exam. Take a prep course, maybe.
I'm sure that Barbary offers a baby bar exam prep course.
I'm sure they do.
I'm sure.
And then, I think that really exploring what do you want to do with your life and what you were saying earlier about, do you actually want to go to law school or is this a placeholder?
And ask questions. Talk to family friends that are lawyers. Ask to intern at a law firm if you're in college or in high school. You want to try to pull the curtain away as much as you can, because hearing it is one thing, but seeing it, because you get the opportunity to shadow someone or work at a law firm, even if you're just making copies and getting coffee or uploading documents, you're still around it and you still get some experience and you can see what it's like.
Right.
So, and with that, Austin, do you have any final words of wisdom?
Oh, that's it.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in, and don't go yet. We have closing arguments. Hey y'all, don't go. We have closing arguments coming up for you in just a second. But before you listen, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast if you got any value from today's episode. And please share the podcast with others. And if you want to interact with Austin or me, or tell us what you want to hear next, you can find me on Instagram at andrea.s.turner, Austin at The Dallas Lawyer, spelled out, or the podcast, #lawyered, spelled out. Look forward to hearing from you. Well, Kardashian drama once again. Khloe Kardashian is sick and tired of Kimberly Alexander harassing her, claiming that Tristan is Kimberly Alexander's baby daddy. This woman keeps sending messages to Khloe, keeps saying that Tristan is her baby daddy. Tristan has taken multiple paternity tests showing that he is not Kimberly Alexander's baby daddy, and yet the messages continued. Does Khloe have a case for criminal harassment against this woman? Can she get a restraining order against her? Maybe so.